Griffin players here in Korea, all of them, in this game right now. Sword, of course, he is coaching for Breon. Tarzan's overseas, but this is like as close to the Griffin reunion we can get. That's why we got such good trash talk, and I hope that that means that we get a lot of learnings here going into this. Already some change-ups with these bans.
And how poignant as well that it's happening in Gyeongju, such a culturally and historically significant city, because there's the Griffin narrative, right? The fact that all these players are back at it again, but there's also the fact that Doran, Peanut, and Delight were there for the entirety of last year, and obviously Doran and Peanut even going back to 2022 when this run started.
Yeah, now I want to talk about the Nidalee ban because on red side, Hanwha is basically always going to have only one ban because you have to ban the Rumble every time. You have to ban the Ziggs ban every time. Chovy will always have the opportunity to pick up this Smolder. Now, at least the one good thing here for Hanwha Life is they're not having to deal with Maokai because that's going to be banned against Peanut every game. Peanut has been the focus. He's been the strongest player on this roster, picked up multiple POGs yesterday. The question is, what is the answer here to the Smolder? Because it has been very stable in lane. It has been incredibly difficult to deal with in late game. The Ashe comes through here. We will see the Zyra, so lots of engage here already for Hanwha Life.
Who just had the Rocks reaction, by the way? Just watching Ashe Zyra get locked in. Just kind of makes me a bit excited. Of course, Misfortune definitely a little bit on the more popular side, but man, it still just gives me the shivers.
That's a throwback there, and really the set of bans that Hanwha threw out is also what allowed this one too. You can't really play Ashe into Ziggs. That's a matchup that just doesn't really work. Ashe doesn't get to bully the way that she wants to, and Ziggs obviously really good against stationary AD carries. And then the one thing that Peanut and Zyra has struggled with is that Nidalee. So this is, I think, something that Hanwha Life could see coming. A sharp rise in the priority of that Skarner. We have, of course, already seen it come up as Paze is going to lock in the champion that I think has really been his standout, going all the way back to 2022 when he was popping off on this in Challengers in summer.
We actually saw Faker make this work into the Smolder matchup, utilizing that extra range with the draw of V. The Tristana locked in here for Zeka. We saw him considering the Yone as well, and going to this instead shows that he does think of it as a bit of a counter matchup.
And I think it does have a lot of extra utility that the Smolder doesn't have. It has a lot of power in the early mid-game, taking turrets out. If you leave this Tristana alone, a lot of gold gets funneled into Hanwha Life, which can allow you to snowball against that Smolder pick before it really comes online. Faker's performance on it, though, didn't really leave us really fulfilled in terms of the lane matchup. I think Zeka will have a much better time into Chovy here, but on the same hand, in terms of how these team fights are going to look here, a very fragile composition for Hanwha Life thus far. What sort of tanks are we going to see is the big question, as Braum gets taken away to deny that kill lane in the bottom side.
Also wonder what the read from GENG is going to be. Are you going to ban something like a Jax? Because it's most likely going to be Keen that has to go for the blind pick here. Renekton is still available as well. The Alistar gets taken away. Leona and Rel still both up, so I imagine that GENG isn't going to ban one of those. But Doran has really stepped it up this playoffs, had a pretty, similar to Viper, pretty lackluster end to summer, really dropped in the consistency that we saw then at the beginning of the split. But this playoffs has even had some big standout carry games, and T1 felt obliged to just start banning his Jax. So they could also do that if it isn't banned away and give the counter pick to Delight, but given how a lot of these lanes has played out, I imagine that we're going to see either a Leona or a Rel get locked in here.
Now, in terms of engage, you have the Ashe Arrow and you have the Zyra, of course, but it's not necessarily consistent. It's not necessarily going to be very set up. So with the Nautilus being taken away, they'll pivot to the Leona here. It's a pretty strong lane into the Ezreal, depending on what that support is going to be. We've thinned it out quite a significant amount here in these secondary bans, but this gives them also an additional front line. So I do like this Leona pick a lot here, even though it's not the go-to pick with Ashe, with the bans available. Makes a lot of sense. They can keep that counter pick for Doran here as well for the top lane. The Rel's still available here, extremely strong with Smolder, and also to a certain extent Skarner as well, with the combos you can set up, but it also gives you a lot of mid-game team fighting power.
As a 2v2, obviously not going to be anything to be excited about, but that's why you pick the Ezreal, the safety in lane. Hopefully be able to get Lahens out of lane. That's where he's excelled the most.
I was also say 2v2 sounds a bit rich.
Yeah, I mean, good luck, Pace, on that one. Obviously, also one of the reasons why the Ziggs has worked so well for GENG. But we saw yesterday, Delight's impact on the map was absolutely incredible and was one of the big reasons, as this shouldn't come as a surprise. But Doran really has whatever counterpicking a dream. The Camille can even go for something a little bit more impressive, like the Renekton or his Jax. Gnar even is another one.
Yeah, and I think this pick is so strong for Keen, though, because I think Cassante is almost ideal for the composition here for Hanwha Life Esports. If they try to do something fancy here in blind, there's a counter pick opportunity, and also Doran might just want to go for a tank. And Maokai, not Maokai here, the Mordekaiser really fits the bill in terms of what they need in this composition. He's relatively tanky, has a lot of sustain in team fights, but he can just deny the Skarner some of his entry points, because Skarner is so slippery. He can come from any angle, he can go through a wall, he can contest those objectives. One of the best ways to lock him down is just pull him out of the rift entirely.
Not only that, but GENG is playing a double carry composition, and Mordekaiser has the ability to just take out one of the... if you flash ult onto Chovy, if he's ever in a position where that can happen, Apaze alone, I don't know if he's going to have the damage to get through the rest of Hanwha Life before he gets blown up.
There's also the fact that they're pretty much single engage composition as well. You take the Rel out of the fight, they're not going to have any initiative in any of these team fights, and it's likely that Mordekaiser is going to win that 1v1.
Yeah.
I'm willing to make that statement.
Safe
I know
bet.
it's a bit out there. We've seen Keen actually do this the most here in the LCK. We don't have a lot of players with the Mordekaiser license here. A lot of those licenses were issued over in the LPL. That's where they kind of belong. Over here, we haven't found as much success, and Doran is a player that does generally just feel himself on certain picks in certain tournaments, and so far, we haven't seen the Mord here.
Now, I think the main focus here for Hanwha Life needs to be on those Void Grubs. You need to be able to secure enough of those for the Tristana to be able to have that impact inside, take those turrets out, because team fighting early on, you're also going to be a little bit stronger there before the Ezreal gets his 2-item spike, before the Smolder comes online. When you win those fights, you need to get bigger wins on the map. You need to be able to take those turrets out early, be oppressive, because the late game is coming. The scaling for this composition for GENG is coming, so you really need to have a lot of control. You might have to give up a dragon or two, which feels terrible in the Smolder, but you've got to secure those grubs.
I love to see the amount of Hanwha fans as well. The fans of this organization have waited for so long for them to make it back. Again, it's been 8 years since the org has made it. Back then as Rox, now as Hanwha, have had a couple of tumultuous years. Anything from finishing 10th place to Chovy and Deft, dragging them all the way to quarterfinals at Worlds. But an LCK final was out of reach up until this point. And yep,
there it is.
He's back again. And of course, I mean, anyone who's been following League of Legends esports for as long as Peanut was wearing this jersey understands the trials and tribulations for this player in particular as well. His international woes, the fact that he hasn't been able to cross that finish line for this roster ever.
And yet,
you know, since he won back in 2017.
And yet, he has been so consistent. He has never given up. He's the last Rox Tiger. That roster split up entirely. He went to SKT, but he is still a top player, a top jungler. And yes, people will always criticize some of his chokes, some of his international performances, but here domestically has been the pinnacle of top jungle play, smart pathing, and even when he hasn't been considered the best jungler in the LCK, he's always been top 3.
Yeah, and he's also, like, he's won. Obviously. Many other times, you know, twice with GENG, the team he's facing down now, with SKT as well, when he joined that roster in what was considered a super team by a lot of people. He's been able to take titles in the past, but never for this same organization, never to go back and finally deliver it to Hanwha Life Esports for the very first time, but also the successes to the Rox Tigers, and to finally deliver it once again.
And that right there is actually the stickers of the emote set that came out for the LCK.
Ah, yeah.
So you got your buff orange at the ready.
And we do have a little bit of a delay getting onto the Rift for our very first game, guys, but we are very, very close to getting ready to get into it. This is Danny.
Wow.
Coming over.
It's a different look since last time I saw him in Korea.
Say, like, there's
looks
some real
good.
John Lennon energy happening here. I feel like he's really calmed down.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It does suit the crazy vibes of that crazy roster back in 2021.
That's true. I guess I'm a bit too in.
It's a little bit more mad scientist, you know?
Yeah.
He made it to Worlds. It's fine. It was a bit of a tumultuous ride for Wave.
He's just come back to write some sweet music, you know? But we're just making sure that everyone's stuff works. A little bit of a peripheral situation, as you can see here. We've paused it at 0000, by the way.
Yeah.
I know that we're going to be jumping in at about a minute, because that's generally what we do. But yeah, it's just before we get on. I want to make sure that, you know, people can press their buttons and move their mouse. It's pretty good.
And we talked a lot already, and we'll obviously continue to talk about Hanwha Life, what they've been able to achieve, even making it to the finals, given that some people, me included, thought that the plot armor was still going to be too strong. But it looks like we're going to get in the game, so we'll get into that later.
Yep, we've certainly got time. I mean, at least I hope we've got time. Hopefully this isn't a very quick series like GENG fans would have you believe. We're hoping that we see something more from Hanwha Life Esports, debuting this Mordekaiser on the top side of the map for game number 1 of the Grand Finals. Oh, man. Hanwha fans, I am so proud of you. Not as proud of this.
So,
sepia mode, not so good.
Back to my narrative point.
Yeah, please, yeah, give me that. Continue.
On the flip side, I think that when we look at what GENG was able to achieve, particularly for Keen, that spring win was something that really felt like a very deserved end to his journey. The fact that GENG then went on to win MSI as well, being one of the first LCK teams in a good amount of time to do so, really also sets up for the fact that this team has ran our region for almost 3 consecutive years now, right? Starting all the way back in 2022, then having the surprise win when T1 had their dominant split in 2023. And the one constant throughout all of that has been Chovy. And I feel like he has even mentioned this himself in interviews. The insane thing to me is that he's like, yeah, I don't feel like I've had the best split. Yeah. Which, compared to spring, feels somewhat true. But then you look
MVP, by the way.
Yeah, MVP, by the way. By far the best mid laner. But then you look at his stats, and you look at not just the fact that he individually has been such a standout player for so long and has finally broken the curse of not being able to perform internationally, but also the fact that despite all that, we feel like he didn't have as good of a split, which that's insane to me, because the gap between him and as good as Zaka has been still is something that is, I think, the biggest if you compare it to any other role in the Rift today.
There have been some seasons, especially with Chovy on GENG, where I felt like he was the centerpiece and everything was about him, and the rest of the team was solid, but it was Chovy's team, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like he may appear, even to himself, like he's less impactful right now, because the rest of his team is so strong and the synergy is really there, and this team has really peaked, right? We have been living in GENG's legacy. We have been living in their era, like you said, for nearly 3 years here. Chovy's always been a part of that, but now it's no longer just about him. It's about this 5-man roster and their dominance that we saw from them in spring, moving into summer, which was even more dominant. And to me, I look at Chovy as a player who's always improving, always growing, hasn't peaked. As we jump into the game now, we're finally back.
Finally back, and we'll see whether Chovy can peak further here in this one on the Smolder this time around. Of course, I think Smolder is not going to be only played in the mid lane throughout this series. I think this sort of first pick really does help open up drafting opportunities. GENG utilizing it very well here. If Hanwha Life Esports can smack it down in the mid lane, then it's likely that the series gets a bit easier for them moving forward. Not to mention the fact that this isn't their service game.
Should also come as no surprise that GENG is setting up for a lane swap right now with the position they have. The level 1 for Hanwha Life is really strong though. They might have to find a way to at least ensure that they can get something going here in this level 1, because if Peanut's able to just even steal away a Raptor camp, that kind of already starts tilting the experience in favor. But it looks like with Viper already heading towards the bot lane, that's one of your strongest level 1 champions. Not going to be the case, and it looks like we will just have the standard lane swap setup where Kane's going to take the top half of the map. Paze and Keen are going to split, and then Lahens is going to lane with Chovy, and I imagine move around depending on where he's needed.
Yeah, you see Doran's going bottom side here. They set up a deep ward to the left of GENG's Raptor camp, so they'll get some additional information about how the pathing is going to go for Canyon should he decide to go over there and be greedy. Peanut also knows he's safe to now come in here and take these Raptors with that warding. As you look at the win rate here, by the way, for Paze on this Ezreal, it's a pick that's kind of fallen off quite significantly. It was extremely strong a few patches ago, but he was incredible on it. Second really only to Viper in terms of his individual Ezreal plays, and some would even argue stronger than Viper at times. It's a niche pick right now in this meta, but I feel like it's so incredibly strong with this trap because you have a great front line, you spike at 2 items, the Smolder is going to come online later, then you have this hyper-scaling composition, so we have to keep our eyes on how well he is shut down.
Lahens looking to try and yoink some things away here as Delight a little bit later towards that bottom side. And Peanut wanting to collect himself a red buff here as the vertical jungling is going to continue. Still teleport coming through here. Hammerlife considering a bit of a dive as Keen gets down towards that bottom side. Some burly members of GENG down here, but the death grip comes on through. And Doran able to get Keen down to about 50% underneath this turret.
They're going to try, but I don't know. This is a level 3 Cassante. Keen, even with half health, should still be quite tanky.
Yeah, well, they get the CC down. There's the pushback. Keen burning, and it is going to be first blood going over to Lehens. Instantly answered by Peanut taking down Keen.
But while this is happening, FaZe is just pushing to his heart's content. Waves are going to be lost. Experience gone by the wayside. And yeah, they were able to get the kill, but I don't think that's how Humble Life wanted to play it ends.
And Doran's going to get stopped on his back butt.
Yeah, that's going to be the pullback there as Lehens in a little bit of trouble. Viper gets that frost shot on him, and his ex-teammate looks to be going down. Peanut collects another.
Two really greedy plays here from Lehens. The first one ends up going pretty well for GENG and ends up being a bit of a backfire for Hanwha, but this time trying to stop Doran's back there, knowing he has teleport, trying to deny him from getting up there to that top lane and catching some of those waves. Fails and backfires visibly, didn't have any vision control there. Uh-oh.
Delight really just getting in there. Hanwha came to play today. Just flashing on top of Chovy, getting the flash out from a Smolder, absolutely amazing. And now Canyon looking to make his entrance. Zeka still has flash, he is absolutely fine, makes it far enough back here, and Humble Life Esports not going to be answered here in mid.
And now we have a situation where Doran, because he's the only one with TP, he's the only one that can get back to the top wave in time, is the one that is TPing into the 1v2. And we'll see. FaZe is trying to get as much poke as possible, trying to set up for a possible dive. Delight is on his way as well. Mort pre-6 is a lot more diveable than afterwards. They do know this is coming. There is a ward there that is going to spot Kenyon. Delight's on his way. I don't know if he'll be in time, though.
He's too late.
Yeah, Doran's going to be in a lot of trouble, but Delight should turn up.
They know.
Lehens gets the information. And now Doran, can he actually find it? That death grip, absolutely amazing. But the crash down's working out. Doran gets a big old shield, and GENG unable to actually close any of these kills. Delight goes in. Canyon's so incredibly low. Lehens trying to tank up the turret, and FaZe ends up collecting the kill. But now the reset monster could be coming through. FaZe has already gone down, and Zeka not actually able to get into range here. You can see him looking for a reset angle, but not going to go too deep.
And the presence of mind there, FaZe is able to, yes, trade 1-for-1, but GENG, I thought Humble was overforcing towards the bot side, but even with the light there, and FaZe initially tanking the turret, they feel priced in to this play.
Yeah, and with Zeka being able to roam up, I mean, if you don't commit there, then you end up getting caught, and you can see Doran fight back there with Delight there. It's just going to be so difficult to play out, so they do end up committing. Going back to this play down here on the bottom side, Doran takes that extra tower shot. Doesn't ultimately matter here. Keen is engaged on so quickly by Delight, can't use Unstoppable until afterwards. And then Lehens decides moments later to go for a back tonight. We're going to skip that part and go back up here. You can see, look at how quickly Delight actually turns this engage. FaZe takes an extra turret shot here. Canyon takes one too as they decide, okay, we have to do this. Zeka is coming up. There's a ping on him instantly. You can see on the mini-map. And they just cannot actually deal with this. Now, I'm not entirely sure how FaZe does end up ultimately going down here.
Yeah, because he has to, right? Like, he has to try to kill Doran. He knows that he's dying no matter what. But Doran does actually get his head.
But he flash and cleanses as well.
Yeah.
On the play.
Still a lot of cooldowns, and I think Humble Life actually feeling quite good, although with this gank, maybe not.
Big aggression here as Delight's going to get pulled back. The Eclipse doing a lot of work, but I don't think it's going to be able to do enough here as GENG with 3 are able to take him down. Lehens getting revenge on his opposite number.
Lanes aren't real in this game. It's just gank squads and victims of gank squads. As we're just seeing non-stop dives here, non-stop action. Hanwha, though, ending up with a pretty significant gold lead here after the fact. I mean, it's only 200, but they're winning out on a lot of these exchanges. The question becomes, though, have GENG staved off the pressure enough? Because FaZe was able to get that kill earlier on. They have this scaling Smolder, and Tristana isn't able to get any plates just yet. I think Hanwha Life do need to continue to ramp up this tempo.
Well, Zeka trying to trade back here with Chovy. They did collect 3 grubs. Wolf, you and I especially, I think, really like to talk about grubs.
Yes.
Tristana, this little Yordle is pretty good at utilizing them to destroy all of the structures on the map, and they already have 3. So good work there by Peanut to be able to lock down that first neutral objective.
Even Mordekaiser does a pretty good job of letting them down. And this is kind of what we expected. coming out of Pace specifically. A lot of this was done 1v2. Did, of course, receive some up from Kenyan Lahens, but spent a lot of time in top lane by himself as well. Didn't really get too much for his efforts, though. Hasn't really been able to build up a significant CS lead over Viper, and with that kill going down towards the top side, that does make sense. Both junglers have been very proactive as well. Peanut with the dives, but also, as you would expect on the Zyra, has been able to significantly outpace his opponent. And it means that you can just start up these objectives early on. Kenyan is still level 5, which is, I'm pretty sure, also the biggest experience gap that we have between two players right now, meaning that GENG isn't really in a position to get anything going when it comes to contesting.
No, I think Hanwha really, or GENG rather, actually indexed super hard into the top side, right? They tried to set up that dive. They had a ton of deep vision, but they couldn't ultimately stop the grubs from going down. And because they were so indexed in the top side, they didn't have prio bottom side. They weren't able to get the dragon. Now they lost prio with Pace coming back down bottom side. They get both the grubs and the dragon here now, even pushing Pace out of lane.
Well, the arrow is going to sail through. That's 6 points in my country. Life Esports are not going to be able to find the engage angle still with some free time on this outer turret. Going to be able to grab another plate. Lahens still diving forward, and not a lot of control of the wave here for GENG.
Pina just continues his reign of terror. Does take half his health bar as I say that, so probably has to chill out a little bit. But is extremely proactive with this Zyra. And it's particular, and we knew this, right? But the fact that the Light got his Leona's KD might not look that impressive, but he's what enables these plays as Kenyan.
Yeah, there's the Stranglethorns actually to start this one up. Kenyan looking to try and get out of there. It looks like Peanut should be able to steal away a red buff, but is there any more fight in this? Oh, it's just a plant that's able to finish that off. No vision available for GENG, and Kenyan kind of getting bullied in this early game.
And I think a large part of this also comes down to the fact that the Tristana is much more threatening than the Smolder this early on, particularly with Grasp. You see every time these plays happen, Zeka is already on the roam, ready to respond to his team, because you saw Kenyan, I think, thought about it for a little bit there, instead just charged into those Krugs and let his red go.
Yeah, I think Hanwha Life have really been doing such a great job of playing around the fact that they have lane prio and they need to get a tempo advantage here. Sure, there was a lane swap and the Ezreal got some free time in top turret, but with that lane swap protection, he doesn't end up getting plate gold and isn't finding himself now in a comfortable position. The True Shot Barrage quite impactful there in that last moment to prevent a follow-up dive there, but they still put the pressure on Canyon. They still take his red buff away. But let's see what happens here on these next grubs, because this is where things get really important for Hanwha Life. They need to secure those and start getting Tristana into a side lane as we see the Ashe go mid. And how much gold we can generate for Zeka early on is really going to determine what his impact is here before the Smolder goes really, really powerful later on. Plus, you have the Ezreal poke setting up for objectives, a tanky frontline. GENG's composition in the late game is just so robust. It doesn't really have very many weaknesses. So Hanwha Life need to be looking at like a 2,000 gold lead at least at minimum when we get there in terms of getting those turrets off the map, or I think GENG will just run them over. So this is a really pivotal moment here when those grubs spawn in 15 seconds.
Yeah, and we see both teams already adapt to that. Doran actually lane swapping, so you have Viper and the Light on the top half of the map, meaning that they can just walk over. Doran has TP, so he gets to catch the cannon wave, and if he is needed, he can make his way. Phase and Lines, though, as expected, also there. Crucially, Lahens hitting 6. Magnet Storm, absolutely huge. The Light doesn't have level 6 just yet, so we'll see if that is enough reason for Hanwha Life to maybe peace out, but nope, not happening.
There's a teleport in, and we do have the ultimate available here from Doran. The arrow going to connect as Viper is flanking. Okay, Stranglethorns is going to kill Canyon. He can't impale his way out of that one. And some more grubs going over to Hanwha Life Esports in this Tristana.
It was a very greedy call from GENG, but you don't want to give over 6 grubs. 5 is almost inevitable in this situation because you only have one smite button. Once you use yours, Peanut can always get the second. I like the lane assignment where they put Chovy bottom. He had teleport, but you're up against so much engage and your composition just really is not online. And they had to kite back. They had control of grubs. Sure, they had pride, but they never really had actual control. With Viper being able to come down there from top lane so quickly, has the arrow as well. And GENG make a big misstep here. Hanwha get both the grubs they were looking for and some additional gold.
And it was clear that GENG's plan, the moment that Doran's teleport came in, was, okay, it's fine. Chovy, you just shove bot wave. We'll get a grub and get out. But thanks to Viper, that is not going to happen. This also means that Peanut is just getting further and further ahead on this Zyra. And down the line, you're going to have the tools to deal with that, particularly once Smolder is online, can use the plans. It's very straightforward. You see, they try to get out, and Keen actually tries to catch it there for Canyon with the Unstoppable, but it doesn't end up working out, so GENG just has to abandon ship, and this is quite big, because of that, they get the grubs very easily. If they try to go for an engage, it doesn't work. Maybe Chovy gets an additional plate. And again, I think GENG they're not going to be too worried because we already talked about the Smolder and its scaling. What's important to note with Ezreal is that what was nerfed specifically was how oppressive his early laning was, which was good because Ezreal probably shouldn't be allowed to win every lane in the game.
Yeah, it was a bit silly.
As was the case. But when you get to 2 items and onward, you are still incredibly threatening, not just poke threat, but in a team fight, if you don't get locked down, if you're able to stay out of range of the Zyra and the Mordekaiser, you can just chip down at them and rack up huge damage numbers.
And I think that's really the way these late game team fights are going to go if Hanwha can't snowball this game any further, just simply because he outranges both the Tristana and the Ashe, and it's difficult to lock him down with Leona engaged, which is why the Nautilus ban was so fantastic. It's great into the Smolder as well because he can, of course, flap away. But, you know, it's going to have to be one of those games where Hanwha just end up hitting them with their wallets. You know, eventually they can just close the gap, get that Mordekaiser to ult somebody, and win those team fights with a fed Tristana and resets, because the Ashe is going to be a lot more utility in terms of how she plays out these team fights than the Smolder and Ezreal later on that are just so incredibly strong and punish any sort of indecision because you have that poke coming through and that burn from the Smolder Q. Zeka's having a 1v2 up here for now as they're trying to shut down this Tristana, trying to prevent him from getting those plates.
What's big here is that with lands roaming up, they're ensuring that at least they, as I say that, maybe with more people, they should be able to hold on to this turret at least for now. Paze is making sure that mid lane doesn't get too far pushed in, and this is something that GENG does really well, which is the defensive play, making sure you don't lose any turrets without really getting anything significant. As the hell yeah, I assume for the Cloud Ray. As
good soul to start us off.
We got the Swift Drift right from the get-go. That's a sign of a good finals.
Hopefully we get a Drift a little bit later.
Oh yeah.
For those playing at home that haven't maybe watched as much LCK, that would be an Infernal Soul. Pick up the Cinders, drift around the map, feel really good about
dive Mordekaiser.
Yeah, dive Mordekaiser at level 10 with the ultimate available. That is a rough choice, but they are still going to consider it. Chovy, he's the one that goes in. The stun had already connected as well from Viper. And Chovy able to get out of the way of one of the abilities, but not that one. Still, it doesn't matter. The Mordekaiser goes down.
But
and somehow he survives. I think the grass might have been a pretty important part.
Yeah, the Tristana, though, is going to be able to push topside here, taking that turret out and start putting the pressure on this inner. A lot of resources spent for GENG to make that play happen. It was not an easy pick. It was very expensive. Doran doesn't flash. He knows they're going to lose a turret in exchange, but look at how many resources were already spent to try to stop the Tristana from getting that plate gold, getting that top turret. She still gets it. It's in trade for a turret, but that's a Cassante picking up the gold versus a Tristana picking up the gold. And this is exactly where Hanwha Life want to be. Herald gets dropped down here in mid. This is the type of snowball this composition needs to have to win this game. And Hanwha Life are finding the angles. There's that 2,000 gold lead and even an extra crash.
Yeah, another crash, half the health bar, and actually this is just
the inner.
It's a Tristana and it's 5 grubs. Like, that is not long for the world. In a turret, a lot of gold. And Hanwha Life Esports, despite the fact that they lose Doran, they're unable to actually get that counter kill onto Chovy down there. It doesn't matter. They still extend the lead.
Yeah, colossal win. TP was invested there as well, right, from Keith to make sure he could be a part of the play. And I'm loving the insanely high pace with which Hanwha Life is playing this game. We've seen GENG be basically insurmountable within the LCK if they can just get away with plays like this. So the moment that this teleport is invested, I think ends up being super significant, right? The immediate response back comes through and they're going to just shove towards mid. And this arrow almost turned this into a 1-for-1 trade with all the investment. I think we were justifiably a little bit afraid of the Mordekaiser dive attempt.
And in my brain, I'm thinking this is an 80 carry versus a Mordekaiser in melee range. That's generally going to go poorly. It didn't really look like that, actually.
Yeah, he has grasp and
he has grasp and a billion extra CS.
Yeah, but also he has his ultimate, right? Gets a lot of extra healing from the mom.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no other damage obviously coming through at that time. Doran's still sitting on one item. Zeka once again putting pressure on these turrets. You can see his teammates shadowing him every time he tries to put this pressure on, so that if there's a rotation, they can actually catch somebody who's trying to come over, then punish him. So they're always playing around this Tristana. And now that Doran has freedom on the top side, he's just going to be farming it up. GENG are the ones who have to follow Zeka's lead here, try to get the punish, try to deny these turrets from going down. I mean, that's the tug of war that we're playing here. That 2,000 gold lead has become a 3,000 gold lead. Zeka, he's the one with all the money. And this is exactly where Han will want to be. But here comes the arrow.
Another arrow going to connect this time onto hands. That's a big impale onto Tula, but the Stranglethorns encounter. Triple knockup. True Barrage says no to that play, though. They take down the turret, yes, but they lose almost everyone. As Hanwha Life Esports now have to back away. But do they even lose? I mean, that's a lot of money.
I gotta say, this time it's GENG that is able to get the punish. Then King couldn't join, let me be clear. Doesn't have teleport available just yet, but he doesn't really need to. And we talk about diving the Mordekaiser. Diving a Skarner is
yeah,
kind
that's
of the
a worry.
same level of insanity here as Lehans isn't able to get anything going, but Canyon just makes sure that Chovy can do as much damage as he did there. Then the Magnet Storm to keep him longer. Viper wasn't actually there from the get-go, and then with the Phase ultimate, they're able to get the kills that they need to hold off.
I think this could have gone very differently if that Impale doesn't go off the way it does, because they have the teleports, they have the minion there, they can blow up the turret so quickly. It's really a bunch of AoE that comes down with the Impale, with the Smolder ult, with the True Shot Barrage that really helps GENG hold on there. If the Impale whiffs, if Canyon doesn't play it just as well as he did, which again, not a tough ultimate to hit, but we have seen some crazier things in the LCK. But if he doesn't hit that, then this ends up being the correct call for Hanwha Life, and they actually trade up so massively after the turret goes down. So clutch play from him. Hanwha Life's gold lead fading a little bit after that.
The big problem is the fact that Peanut died. That is so much bounty gold going over to GENG, really stifling that gold advantage that Hanwha Life Esports had built for themselves. Bounties are so incredibly important in this game. That could be a pretty costly mistake here, as Peanut was so much of that early game strength for Hanwha Life Esports. Protecting that bounty was important.
Want to highlight as well, as we saw, this is a while back already, but Keen has actually gone full itemization into Doran, which makes sense. But Zeka and Viper, as of right now, absolutely demolish him. We saw it earlier. Just Koenig isn't going to do a lot, and you can see, ideally, Cassante will be able to walk up.
Guys?
Not so much. No, that
ladies and gentlemen.
gone. It's gone. Yeah.
Delight's going to help out.
GENG's buildings are falling down. Like, all of the buildings just keep falling down, guys.
Well, I mean, this is what T1 failed to do, I think, to the more lethal level that we're seeing Hanwha do today with the Tristana yesterday.
Drive-by?
No, I don't think so. So now Hanwha have, second Drake. It's not soul point, so this is not the end of the world here for GENG. They were able to get that one dragon, so that's 5 minutes of extra time for the Smolder stacking, the Smolder scaling. But I'm starting to get worried about what this map is going to start looking like here as the constant outpacing here of Peanut, of Canyon continues. He could then win the war of Vision as well. It becomes very difficult for Chovy to continue to farm safely and get those stacks. And if you're not hitting champions, you're not stacking as quickly as you are just from going to the minions. Yeah, sure, you stack for both,
but
he
just 29 stacks.
He has hit it at 19 minutes.
Yeah.
Which I still, but what's more important...
And you're right, Wolf, but this is silly.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is much faster than what we were seeing yesterday.
Yeah.
I want to highlight as well, GENG's about to hit double Triforce and Manamune Spike, so like their composition is going to be feeling a lot better. If Keen can also get his Iceborne Gauntlet, I think the fights from here on out are going to be looking a lot differently. And it's very telling that even with the turret lead currently sitting at 5-3, even with how the map has been going, GENG, partially thanks to the shutdown, partially thanks to, as per usual, their CSing being really top-notch, I don't think is at a substantial item deficit to the point where it's going to be invalidating their team fights. And again, remember all the way back, which I'm sure all of us do, but if you're unfamiliar, there was one of the most famous counter picks in the league ever was MF support into Zyra support.
Yeah.
Because you could, you could get the bounce through her plans. Now, what if that bounce was a max health, true damage burn when you hit plant and everything behind it just kind of goes boom?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly some truth to how well Smolder can play into Zyra plant setups, and Hanwha Life will need to respect that and play carefully around that, because that damage is so frustrating to deal with, even when you're trying to contest Prio for a dragon, for example. And, okay, hold that thought, Lehen's going in.
Yep, Death Realm is going to come on through here as Doran just wanting to take down the Realm before the battle's even started. Pays in a lot of trouble in the arrow, and it's Zeka that's able to lock down the kill, gets the reset out of the way of Canyon now. And Lehans is still alive, but it does not matter. There's so much damage raining down. He finally finds a Magnet Storm, and maybe it's just going to be Chovy that ends the show, but in fact it's not, because Zeka's here and he says, remember 2022? Well, here's another dose.
And we said it's a two Gary composition, and one of the Garys taken out immediately. Daze is blown up, doesn't get to do anything, and even with a heroic re-engage, they just don't have the damage.
And so watch Paze's arcane shift here as Doran goes for the ult first. Paze in trouble, isolated alone here as Doran is holding the door. flash here into the Arcane Shift. He just dies right into the arrow. Big mistake. And then you talked about this just moments ago, Cargo, with the current itemization for Keen here. He just does not last. Now, with really good engages here, with the Magnet Storm combo with Canyon, there are a lot of Qs that go up, a lot of burn damage, and it looks hopeful. But Zeka is just going to get those resets and pick up a triple. Hanwha Life win the fight swimmingly and take a Baron.
And Zeka, absolute hero in that one, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he's able to take out Pace, maximize his damage, and I talked about the items earlier, he has been sitting on like a 2.5 item core for quite a while. I'm pretty sure he has his first item finished now as well, with the Baron coming in. And Hanwha Life could be setting up, and there it is, look, Lord Dom's third, so Keen, yeah, well now he has his Iceborne Gauntlet, but still not going to be the front line that I think GENG were hoping for.
It matters a little bit less, definitely, with already armor penetration coming in. He's got a Vamp Scepter on top of it.
Yeah.
Double Rylai's completed here for Doran and Peanut as well. I mean, that is so much magic damage. We've seen that the Baron just evaporated. Much easier when you kill all of your opposition, but also if they go for a next Baron, it goes down almost instantly.
Yeah, we
like
have to
these
consider,
Leandries and stuff, the shred is insane.
we have to consider the next Baron fight, right? If Hanwha Life have that setup, even though the plants can be frustrated with, against Smolder, you're going to have so many ways to deny entry here for GENG because this map gets opened up even further from this Baron, and they can do things like, for example, while they're contesting Baron Vision, have Zeka go and solo the Dragon. And so this Dragon fight here is really tough for GENG because, yes, Smolder is online. We have 2-item spike for him and the Ezreal, but they don't have any control. If they lose this fight and the Dragon, it is looking pretty doomed. It looks like that's enough, to stop that Smolder in the late game from coming online, especially if you consider how ahead Zeka is right now. So it's a tough call to make for GENG here, whether they can test this or not. And Hanwha Life are making it for them by just saying, you can't get anywhere near this Dragon.
It's also, again, if Doran has his flash at any point, Chovy needs to play so much more respectful, because if he gets taken out of the fight, with just Chovy, I'm like, maybe you can win. We saw how close that previous fight was. Is it just Pace?
Oh, yeah.
It's not happening, and even though Chovy, I think, might live depending on the terrain, Smaller is still in this game, so I think Hanwha Life are in a great position. They're going to be able to get Soul Point here, but at the same time, GENG have fought their way back from some monumental deficits, and there is still always going to be eventually the team fighting, but I'm looking at specifically Keen on this blind Cassante. This is something that GENG keeps doing, even though Keen, I feel like, gets beat down again and again and again, and it's not out of necessity. We know that Keen can play the counter picks very well, and I don't think it's one of the core issues in this game, but it does feel like what he's supposed to provide, which is a reliable front line, just doesn't seem to be working. Not because of the execution, but just look at how accelerated both Viper and Zeka are, and that Mordekaiser obviously into tanks. It's gonna feel great.
Yeah, he has to build magic resist and armor though, because Zyra and Mordekaiser do so much damage.
Yeah, no matter what.
Absolutely ridiculous.
You can't win.
Yeah, no matter what.
Can't.
Like, you're going to be dealing with that double 80 carry. You're going to be dealing with the Leandri's burn. I mean, there's just so many things that make Keen's life miserable. Not to mention the insane single target blow-up that HLE have with Zyra, with Ashe, and Leona. And even the Mordekaiser, to a certain extent, helps out with that single target isolation. And I'm not talking about his ult, just talking about his pull. So you really are kind of a sandbag that's going to get ripped to shreds in a lot of these fights if GENG don't have that vision set up. They need a lot of time that Keen sometimes isn't able to provide for those Qs to come through from Chovy. We saw how close it was next to Baron there to, if you actually get just a little bit of extra time as Chovy, how close those fights can look. But they need to find those angles, and Dragon goes over. They give that one up as Baron was still available. But the next Dragon, you can't give that one up. You can't give up this next Baron, or it's HLE 1-0.
Well, HLE looking for a little bit of an inner turret siege here as Mom comes down, gets a little bit mad at Doran, and Doran says, "And what?" And they proceed to say nothing. Go about your day, and he does. A little bit of interference being played here as GENG really don't want Hanwha Life Esports taking that short track through their own jungle. As they're going to lose all of their camps. They're going to keep falling further and further behind. And Peanut, a player very, very good at this, is there. Hail, speaking of which, he's just going to get blown up. Lahent's going to follow suit, but you can see Chovy in a decent position to do damage, and now Pace is actually in the fight. And look at these Qs. They're being torn apart over the wall. Is Zeka, though, still looking for some angles? but they're like, nope, we don't want to risk it. We're going to try and get out of there.
I mean, it's just a single flash snap decision as Hanwha Life. Their Baron is gone. They didn't get any inhibitors. And they're like, all right, well, we'll just group as a demolition squad. We have this fed Tristana. We're going to make the turrets disappear. And again, just like we saw on the bottom side play, Canyon once again snap engages and pulls them in. 2 dead here for Hanwha Life off the play.
Is that worth it though? Because that was a pretty heavy investment. Canyon not having flash on any subsequent play does definitely hurt. Keen also invested his, whereas it's only Doran's, which again I do think has a lot of value for threatening the Smolder. As we take it a look very straightforward, able to just immediately.
Oh no!
Peanut's ult just goes.
Threw his ult the wrong direction.
Yeah, goes completely wide. Then Pays in this scenario can actually threaten Zeka enough so that he jumps over, and then here Zeka doesn't actually get to put the damage down onto Chovy and Pays the way he did in the previous fight.
But he did Buster Shot all of the damage away and possibly save the rest of his teammates.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Baron's up here in 30 seconds. GENG got a lot of prio from that.
Chovy TP'd.
Chovy TP's
Double
for this.
TP.
Yeah. Second Delight making their way in here as you can see Viper trying to keep them at bay with that volley.
Lahen's getting a lot of vision set up here actually into Hanwha Life's jungle. It has a nice wraparound angle potentially as well.
Oh, Delight's fishing for it. They find the solar flare. This is the flashless Skarner. He still finds an impale, but is it going to be enough as Peanut goes golden? But that's a lot of bad guys. You're not on GENG anymore, my friend. And Doran now just trying to run away. Once again, Peanut in the ground.
And that's the jungler gone, and now GENG don't have a jungler themselves. We'll see if they want to go for Baron, because obviously...
Let's flip it, no smites.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Well, I don't think they should, but it looks like they might.
Look at the positioning of Lahen's though. He has so much vision, he set it up earlier. They have a lot of information. They can punish, they can turn.
Yeah, Zeka going for a bit of an angle here. The crash down works, and there's the execute. Can't Buster Shot him away from that one, and that should be Baron. Going over to GENG as Viper, I don't think wants to contest.
Lahen's missing his stun there and still making the play work. That's that Lahen's energy that we're looking for.
I mean, he was just moments before they went for that engage onto Keen, setting up for that vision for Baron. He had so many wards set up. You can see all of them on the mini-map there, and you can see where he is on the mini-map here as well, scanning. And then the engage here onto a flashless Skarner seems like a great idea initially, but look at the impale value, and Pays and Chovy layer that damage in. And in this moment, when you start to lose control versus Ezreal Smolder, the only option is to get the hell out. You are never going to win that extended fight. Yeah, Keen dies, but he tanked so much damage, allowed for that Skarner engage to come through from Canyon. Zeka here punished with all that vision they had earlier. They're like, oh, you think you can contest? You think you can 50-50 this? No, we already set this up.
And Flash actually coming out from Viper in the last moments there as a slow onto Pays. Crucial Barrage going to be his response. That misses as well. And Hanwha Life, I don't think they're going to be able to grab their Cloud Soul that they had waiting for them in the pit. Looks like GENG will be able to collect that, utilizing the Baron that they had. Only 1,300 on the Red Bull Baron power play, and Hanwha Life Esports still have a gold lead, but this is really starting to turn into There Be Dragons territory.
Yeah, we're going to get to the point where a fight just is not going to be won unless Doran gets access to Chovy. That's the one way that there is still an out here for Hanwha Life, because straight up front to back, with how tanky Canyon now is, Keen obviously has gotten to the point, getting very close to his next time finish as well, where he can just tank that damage, and the follow-up of Lahen specifically is just not going to be able for Hanwha Life to get through that fast enough to not tank like free Qs. As Chovy has a QSS for the arrow, and then also a stopwatch, just to make sure he's okay.
For the next arrow.
Wait.
All right, the arrow is going to connect onto Viper's ex-teammate. The Stranglethorns just spreads them all out. Zeka's almost dead. Chovy is going to use one of his stopwatches, this one for the Death Realm, and now that Mordekaiser is just dead. It's Pays that executes him in the end, and the inner turret now going down. GENG might just be finished with game one.
And Chovy does actually get found by Doran, but Pays says, I can step up this time around, gets the damage, and Hanwha can't collapse.
GENG, massive win here. It all starts with the play. Topside, Canyon flashes for the Impale. They get map control. They turn that fight in mid, and it's just so impressive.
Still going, another Magnus Storm comes in here, maybe a little bit of a bridge too far there, Lahen's, as he was feeling himself. You know, it's been a bit of a hypey game so far, as that is going to put an end to the push, but an inhibitor is pretty good. thus far. There's a very deep ward down there, but I don't know how many teleports. We're just going to go into the replay and hope there's no more extra action, as they thought this was the angle.
And this is what you mentioned, Chronicler. Maybe you can lock Chovy down, but he's got the stopwatch for safety. He's got that burn damage already going through, and there is just no world, I think, anymore with the Cassante now starting to be so tanky that he can last long enough that you're ever going to win a fight here unless you cheat a fight, unless you catch somebody, unless you catch GENG in a mistake. But they have Baron, they have map control, they had it ever since that flash impale from Canyon. We asked the question, was it worth it? You look at that fight follow-up where he's able to get the impale even without it. I think the answer is absolutely yes, because they don't get that setup on Baron, they don't get that deep vision, if they don't get that punish topside, and it's just like watching dominoes fall. Hanwha Life were always in control with this Tristana. They took so many turrets, Zeka was so ahead, and it's just one play into a great clutch there from Canyon in the second fight, and then the whole map belongs to GENG, and you can't even remember the advantages Hanwha had 5-6 minutes ago.
And imagine making a champion that scales like basically infinitely with hitting minions with abilities, and then having Chovy in the game and then letting him play it. It's sort of...
I'll have to imagine, I can see it right here.
I know, we're sort of seeing it, and I'm starting to realize that
Good
that shouldn't be
hypothetical,
allowed.
Atlas.
Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed. That shouldn't be a thing that we're letting into the game. As Arrow is going to connect. It's onto the Cassante, though. He's happy to tank that one up. The plant's just being taken down.
The burn!
Yeah, Lehens knows that he's seen, because of course there is a control ward down there, but yeah. This is just Mom comes down and breathes a little bit, and Hanwha Life Esports, I think they know that they're gonna have to give up an inner turret.
There's no teleport flank angle.
Soulflare does get a flash out for, no, it's an arcane shift. They look pretty similar. I was a bit hopeful that Hanwha Life Esports actually get something there, as this Grasping Roots is gonna connect this time.
He's got Cleanse Flash, and his he'll come back in a second. Yeah. It's so hard to lock down this champion without that Nautilus pick, you know, that was banned earlier. I mean, Leon is still good here, but this is so impressive. There's no teleport wards, there's no flank angles, there's no real fight, like I said before, that Hanwha can win legitimately. Not a front-to-back, not a long fight, not a fight that takes more than an instant kill, basically, or an instant pick by Doran, which at this stage I feel like is just not possible. The Zonias, the QSS from Chovy, Randuin's is done for Keen. He's no longer made of paper like he was in the mid-game. I think Hanwha Life need to somehow steal this one away, cheat this one away, or it's just GENG going, I'm ready for the next fight, I'm scaled, I'm online.
I love, though, that, like, looking at the gold, still barely elite. Between these two teams, I think the biggest it's gotten is, like, what, 4K when Hanwha was there. Obviously, gold value not going to be everything, but when looking at the items, it is actually very similar across the board. The obvious issue here is Chovy, and we keep going back to it because it is so game warping, and you can see Hanwha Life consistently just tries to find a way to deal with this, but the problem is it doesn't really get better. This isn't the scenario where you can get, unless Chovy mispositions, but like, again, QSS as well as stopwatch, because Chovy knows as long as he doesn't die, losing fights is going to be insanely hard, and now Hanwha Life, they're just stuck defending their base.
And we talked about the single target lockdown that Hanwha Life have, but who do you lock down now? Keen's no longer weak. He's no longer burstable. Canyon, if you try to lock him down, but he still gets his impale off, you've engaged on yourself, essentially. You can't get Chovy. He's got Zonias. Pays, Flash, Cleanse, Arcane Shift. You can't lock him down, and Lehens is looking to engage, you know? There isn't a great target anymore. They've just scaled so hard, and look at the damage.
Yeah, this Arcane Shift forward from Pays understands that he's still so incredibly safe behind these big tanks.
Yeah, he's not afraid. And Hanwha Life is getting poked down.
And I'll answer your question. They have to engage onto Chovy. They have to use everything on Chovy. Chovy's going to go through those buttons that he has, and Hanwha Life Esports are going to hope they're not dead by the time Chovy is dead, because if he's left to hit them with anything, he just dies. Arrow going to connect. It does give them a bunch of extra vision. Lehens trying to crash away from this. The Baron kind of ignored now. Doran just putting Lehens into that death realm. And the Impale is going to connect. It's onto Peanut, but he goes golden as well. His Zonya is now completed. Can he get another spell off? And it's the Cassante in trade for this Zyra. But look at Chovy, they just cannot get anywhere near him without almost dying.
And the big thing here is that the bot wave, or top wave rather, still pushing in. And Peanut's down this time. GENG does have the smite. The fight position was a little awkward there. Really well done by Hanwha Life to keep the damage from Chovy at bay, but it just doesn't feel like it matters. Maybe they'll be able to trade for the soul here. I don't think that alone is going to be enough.
But I think it's the only choice they can make. They clear the wave. Zeka still had teleport, so he can come over here and help secure this so GENG can't get the double. But Cloud Soul is really just going to be your hopeful buffer for maybe an Elder Flip situation. That's all you've got left, and you're going to have to try to defend this Baron, which is so incredibly difficult with an inhibitor already down. And Doran tries to lock Lehens down here to turn this into a 5v4 fight, but he's so isolated as the rest of the team doesn't trust. They have no vision. Look at those control wards to the left of the red buff. They don't know where Canyon is, and they know they can't step up and try to actually help kill Lehens once he's out of the Death Realm, because they're just going to get blown up, they're going to get impaled, they're going to get caught. And you can see Zeka's playing at arm's length. He's like, ooh, do I want to rocket jump in here? The answer is you can't. You don't have the power in this fight anymore. You don't have any control. And even though he's super fed, it is the late game. He's got his own QSS. He just has too many targets to burn through and two big threats that are so hard to lock down.
Oh, 6th item finally completed here for Viper as well. Last item, Infinity Edge, does mean that he's going to be doing a fair bit of damage here on this Ashe. Maybe another legitimate threat to come out here from Humble Life Esports, but it still feels like such a difficult task, despite the fact that it's still 2.5k. Like, the biggest lead that we've seen in this whole game has been 3,000 gold, and it's 40 minutes in.
And it's still, like, again, I think Humble Life now are on the back foot. It's very clear from the map movement as well.
Oh, yeah.
But this is still winnable for them. They can still go up 1-0 in this grand finals the same way that they did in the first time these two teams faced up. That was very different, though. I feel like that game did feel like GENG were definitely taking easy pace.
Oh, they think they maybe found pace here. Is the arrow not going to connect? Zeka still looking for these autos. You can see the passive doing a whole bunch of work as Chovy called his mom just to ask whether there's another opportunity here. But she doesn't quite make it all the way.
The TP coming in.
Yeah, looking for the angle here. Zeka, he goes down extraordinarily low.
Chovy?
Can he actually join the fight is the question. As Doran, oh man, if Chovy had walked a little bit closer,
Oh, no, never.
would have been dangerous.
Come on!
And instead, the teleport comes in and they lose an inhibitor in the mid lane. This Baron doing its work here for GENG. They're not taking the risks that Humble Life Esports need them to.
And even if Doran flash ults him there, he's got the Zonias, and the rest of the team isn't there to follow up, and then that's just going to be pushing mid. He doesn't commit. He wants to use this defensively. He wants to just buy time for this Baron. 30 seconds left, but now he's down to teleport. The third inhibitor hanging by a thread here.
The minion wave just kind of gave up. And so Paze is going to help that one move on over. Did look a little bit comical, but it was necessary. Arrow going to connect into the backline there. Good buffer on the arcade shift as the impale used only onto Delight, but he's still melting. Doran trying to get into that backline, but it's Chovy that locks down the first one. Keen in trouble, but how much trouble is he really in? Because this dragon is only just getting started, but so's the Tristana. Some angles here for Viper as well, as now they're looking for it. Chovy is so incredibly low. He flashes low at the burn. Is it enough? And the answer's no, as Humble Life, they find the team fight.
And this time around, GENG throws a whole lot of damage around, but they don't get the two crucial members. We are 40 minutes in. The death timers might be long enough. We'll see. I imagine Viper and Zeka, they're definitely going to try.
They've just got to make sure they kill the super minions. Kill the super minions.
I mean, they have this really insane push. I mean, it is a level 18 full build Tristana here.
25 seconds for base. They can definitely get the inhib.
Oh, we've got an Elder Flip in this game, boys.
Oh,
we have definitely got an Elder Flip in this one. It's going to be an inhibitor to go down here.
And
I don't know whether they get...
though,
there's a lot of damage. There is a lot of damage. Arrow is back up again. Canyon extremely tanky. Lehens trying to get in there. Look at that. The Nexus turret just evaporates. As Zeka is not going to be dying to Lehens.
It's going for it.
It's going for it. The rocket jump and game one goes to Humble Life Esports.
Oh, Zeka! Absolute nerves of steel. He says, I have taken this game. It belongs to me.
And his Super Soldier title is definitely still his here in game number one. But they got a lot more games to get through after this one. And man, there is a lot of tape to go over on both sides of this. But the one thing I'm sure about is that if we get any more of these, all three of us are going to die, I think. I mean, that might happen.
Every 3-0 predictor has been locked out of being correct of this finals, and every single one of them probably fears for how this series could look, because game one already, by the way, with GENG on blue side, Humble Life played to their win cons. They were able to get a tempo advantage, and when the game fell apart, when they lost control, they handled the pressure well. They lost an inhibitor, traded up the second inhibitor. Look at how much damage Chovy does, but they kill him in the end because, as you mentioned, Crocker, the damage was so spread in that last team fight.
That's just game one.
Just game one.
That's just game one. GENG end up losing a 40-minute game with
an
a
800
smolder,
gold lead.
With a gold lead. Oh boy!
We are in for something today, I think,
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Yeah, I
think
would
we are in
say
for
we are.
something
Oh man, all right. And I think Viper did like 20k of that damage in that last team fight as well. Because as that Infinity Edge was completed, it was like, oh wow, he can help win these team fights. Wasn't necessarily on the radar and then pulled it through. But man, I hope we have more games like that in this grand final. It's time for us to go to a short break, and then we'll allow Orcs to gloat a little bit about his prediction. See you soon.
이거 웬만하면 끝낼 수 있으니까 잘해보자.
침착하게.
야 이거 애쉬궁 돌면 그냥 하나 점프하고 잡자. 그래. 3초. 입 빠졌고 다음에 다시 클리어하려.
내일 5초가 나머지 20초다.
그러니까 무조건 끝낼 수 있어.
내일 나갈 거. 이제 15초야.
해보던가.
아 이거 제 때리면.
아 타워. 그냥 타워 해봐.
이제 10초. 아래 타워.
아니 타워. 위에 타워. 아니 타워 해줘. 그냥
타워,
타워 해줘. 타워 하면 끝나. 타워 해.
나이스!